In this video, we will discuss one of the most commonly used Excel functions, the if function. This video is aimed at beginner users, and we will use simple examples to illustrate how to use the if function while creating formulas. We will cover how to apply the if function, how to recognize when you need to insert multiple conditions, which means using a nested if function, and how to combine the if function with other logical functions, like and or. So, let's get started. The if function allows you to set a condition that the value being evaluated must meet. Depending on whether the condition is met, the function will take one of two specified paths. When you're using the word if in your task statement, this is your first indication that you will likely need to employ the if function. For example, consider a scenario where you have a list indicating the number of various products. The task is, if the quantity of a product is greater than 0, display the phrase, in stock. If it equals 0, display, out of stock. In our problem statement, we used the word if, which helped us formulate the condition, the value in the quantity column must be greater than 0. If this condition is met, the function takes the first path and returns, in stock. If the condition is not met, the function takes the second path and returns, out of stock. The syntax of the if function consists of three arguments. First, we set the condition. In this case, the value in the quantity column must be greater than 0. Next, we define the result that the function will return if the condition is met, the phrase in stock. Remember that text values should be enclosed in double quotes. The third argument is the result the function will return if the condition is not met, out of stock. We can enter all the arguments manually as I just demonstrated, or we can refer to existing data. This means that when entering the formula, we can include cell references where the values are already stored. This approach makes the formula more compact and easier to work with. If we need to change the condition or the result, we can do it quickly in the corresponding table without having to adjust the formula itself. However, if you plan to copy the formula using autofill, you must ensure that the cell references are fixed, turning them into absolute references using the F4 key. I have detailed video to absolute and relative references, and I highly recommend watching it. This topic is very important, and without understanding absolute and relative addressing in Excel, it can be difficult to work with formulas in the program. Now that we have covered the simplest use of the if function, let's explore a more complex scenario where multiple conditions may need to be evaluated. For instance, consider the following task. For values greater than or equal to 10, display the phrase, stock available. For values between 1 and 9, display, low stock. And for a quantity of 0, display, not available. Essentially, we have two conditions to address. So let's construct a formula for them. If the value in the quantity column is greater than or equal to 10, we will return, stock available. Next, we need to specify the result of the function when this condition is not met, meaning when the value is less than 10. In this case, we know the value must fall within the range of 0 to 9. Therefore, if it equals 0, we will return not available. Otherwise, we will return low stock. This gives us two if functions within a single formula. When nesting functions, it is crucial to pay close attention to the syntax, as a misplaced parenthesis or comma can lead to an error that may be difficult to identify. What if we need to further segment our data? Let's enhance the previous task by adding another condition. For values greater than 100, display, plenty in stock. And for values less than 100, display, in stock. The previous conditions also remain in place. So, if the value is greater than or equal to 10, but less than 100, we should return, in stock. Since the value must satisfy two conditions at the same time, we will use the in function in combination with the if function. We will create a formula using the if function, but before specifying the condition, we will introduce the in function. This function takes conditions as arguments, separated by comma. We have two conditions to specify. The value must be greater than or equal to 10 and less than 100. If we are using cell references instead of direct values, we must remember to make those references absolute. Additionally, we should keep in mind that the in function has its own parentheses, so we need to be careful with the syntax to avoid errors. We will return, in stock, if the condition is met. Otherwise, we will return an empty string, represented by two double quotes. Our formula works, so let's add a nested if function to fully solve the task. The nested if function will execute if the value is either greater than 100 or less than 10. Therefore, we need to introduce an additional check for any of the subsequent conditions. For example, we can use another and function to check if the value is less than 10, but greater than 0. In this case, we should return low stock. If the value does not meet this condition, it must either be greater than 100 or equal to 0. Thus, the final if function will resolve the task. If the value equals 0, we will return not available. Otherwise, we will return plenty in stock. Let's put in the missing parentheses. The formula is ready. Let's copy it using autofill. It is not necessary for the condition to refer only to one specified cell. For instance, we want to find products priced above $50 and with a stock quantity greater than 60. We can similarly create an if function and use the and function, referencing the appropriate cells. If the conditions are met, we will mark it with an asterisk. If not, we will leave the cell empty by entering double quotes. And we get the result we need. Now that we've explored how to use the and function with multiple conditions, let's consider what to do when we need to verify if at least one of several conditions is met. In this case, it makes perfect sense to use the or function. This function operates similarly to the and function, but with or, it is sufficient for just one of the listed conditions to be true. For example, products that are out of stock might be marked with either a dash or a zero quantity. Therefore, to display the message not available in a cell, we need to make sure that at least one of these two conditions is met. We will create a formula using the if function, and within it, we will use the or function to list our conditions. It's important to remember that a dash is a character and must be entered in double quotes. As a result, the function will check both conditions for validity, and it will trigger if either of them is true. So, we have discussed one of the most frequently used functions in Excel. Please rate the video if you find it useful, subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you in the next videos.